Okay, welcome. Today is our Wednesday Bliss Techniques meeting, and it's nice to have you here. So as usual, we'll have a guided practice, and we'll start by taking a moment to get clear on our intention. Well, let me just say, well, you're not going to need any special props today, but it will be good to have some space on the floor as usual. So, and as usual, you want to have adequate padding so that it's comfortable, but not so much padding that it's too much. So, as usual, like a carpeted floor or a rug, yoga mat, these are good options, or a blanket. Okay, so to begin, though, start by finding any comfortable position or posture. It can be on the floor, you could be lying down, or you could be in a chair or on a couch, or whatever is comfortable for you, so that you'll be able to be present to your experience, not overwhelmed by anything. So hopefully you know what that is for you. Sometimes that's a whole lesson in and of itself, just to find out how on earth can I just be somewhere without being overwhelmed. But I think, at least for those who are here live, you hopefully are able to do that. So we'll just take a few moments and notice that there's some amount of let's call it unpleasantness or discomfort or strain or something that registers as unwanted or unpleasant in some way. And I would like to invite you just to notice whatever and wherever that is. So you might notice what seems to be mental agitation, or you might notice some kind of physical agitation, or emotional agitation. But whatever it is that you notice, just see if you can allow for that to become lighter or transparent. So you're not trying to get rid of anything as much as to regulate. So if we start to understand this in terms of energy, then you could understand that you have an energy system. And your energy system is alive, so it's not just some machine, it's a living entity. And so it can adapt. So we've got two basic variables. One is, we have more than that, but we'll just start with two. One of the variables is how much energy. So we could perceive that there's too little energy, or we could perceive that there's too much energy. And of course, we're like Goldilocks, we're looking for just the right amount of energy. But how much energy is the right amount of energy depends on the second variable, which is the flow of energy. So if we have nicely flowing energy, then we can handle a good amount of energy. Whereas if we have poorly flowing energy, then really any amount of energy is not going to feel very good. Even a very small amount of energy is still going to stagnate, and we'll experience that as unpleasantness. So here, what I'm inviting you to is to just start to notice yourself in this energetic sense, and notice particularly the flow of energy. So notice where there seems to be a stagnation of energy. So the stagnation of energy doesn't feel good because the nature of energy is that it's in motion. So we have also, independent of the two variables that I just described, we could say that we have these two other variables of experience. One is the what we would call awareness, and the other is the manifest experience. So the manifest experience is energy, and its nature is to move. So one of those important principles that we've been exploring over these weeks is to work with nature rather than against nature. So we can observe that nature is constantly in motion. So try as hard as we might, the sun rises and the sun sets. So it just continues to do that. And so rather than working against that, we want to work with it. So understanding that the sun rises and the sun sets, we can begin to work intelligently with nature, have a better experience. So in a similar way, we can notice this energy stagnation, which is it's going against nature. Nature's nature is to flow. Stagnation is against nature, which means that we're going to experience that, at least most likely, in some sort of unpleasant way. Now, when we notice this unpleasantness, normally we have habitual reactions to it, and most of those habitual reactions are not so great. So when we notice that, oftentimes what we do is we tense up, which is to say we further reinforce the stagnation. So we make things worse for ourselves, even though we're trying to help ourselves. So here we're wanting to be present and conscious and choose intelligently to work with nature, knowing that nature's nature is flow. We want to allow for the flow. So wherever you notice that stagnation, wherever you notice the discomfort, just allow for an openness, allow for a flow. So it's a regulation. You can notice that things begin to be more evenly distributed. Where there was a concentration of energy that was experienced in an unpleasant way, there can be a relief. And you can start to open to being aware of your whole self rather than just having those unpleasant fixations. So another way of putting this is, as I often phrase it, it's just to become aware of the low-hanging fruit. But I've described it in this other way today because I think that it's helpful to have other ways of understanding and other kinds of images that we can work with. So then become aware of the breath, and you're breathing through the nose, hopefully. And if not, then hopefully you can choose to breathe through the nose. So please do attempt as much as possible to breathe through the nose for the duration of the practice today. It will be very helpful to you. And in general, in life, it's a very simple and yet very powerful practice that you can use anytime, which is just to be aware of the breath and to have the intention to breathe through the nose. There's more that we can add to that, but just as a starting point, just to be aware of the breath and to breathe through the nose in and of itself is very helpful. And you can then also begin to allow for the breath to be smooth. You can allow the breath to slow down without any kind of force or strain. So it's not a restraint, but it's a relaxation. So just have the intention that you can relax, allow the breath to slow down, and allow the breath to also begin to descend into the lower abdomen without force, just with your intention. So you have to relax into it. So now you have allowed yourself to regulate and soothe and calm and stabilize. So now you're in a good position to get clear on your intention. Because when we're reactive, then we're not so clear on what our intention is, or maybe we're clear on what the intention is, but maybe it's not the best intention because we don't have a greater clarity to allow us to be able to recognize what is really true. So here now we've taken a few moments to calm and regulate so that we can be clear on what's really important. So take a moment just to observe what is really important to you. I mean, really what's important. And there's not a one size fits all. So you can't look around and get the answer from someone else. You have to actually find the answer within yourself because everybody is unique. It's obvious, but sometimes we miss that. This world we live in often reinforces the idea that we should be looking to others in order to know what we should be doing or what's important to us. And it just simply doesn't work that way. We can't find the true fulfillment if we're constantly looking to someone else to help us know what is really important to us. Instead, we have to really start to trust in this deeper nature. And you may or may not be able to cognize it and turn it into some kind of words. But at the very least, you can get a sense of what really matters to you, what's really important. I will suggest to you something about this, which I am suggesting because I believe it will be helpful to you, because sometimes we can still have confusion on this because well, for a variety of reasons. And I want to suggest to you that your life has purpose and it's not a mistake, and that you are here you're here for a fulfillment of what I'll call your soul purpose. So the error that sometimes we can make is thinking, oh, it's all relative and nothing really matters, and I'm going to die anyway, and there's nobody was ever really born, and we can kind of fall into these things which are true, but they're taken in a way that's a half truth, which is to defend against something that's a deeper calling, because we don't know how many. If you consider and you just peer into the past, you see that the past goes into a kind of infinity. So you can recall certain things, and maybe up to certain age, maybe age 6 or 5 or 4. For some people, it's even younger, but then it kind of just goes into an infinity of the past. You can conceptually delineate it and say, well, I was born, but you don't actually, you don't have the ability, at least most of us don't have the ability to really see that or see what's on either side of it. But if we just open intuitively presently, we can notice that actually the past just extends into infinity. So we have our origins in this infinity. And then similarly, if you peer into the future, the same kind of thing, it extends into infinity. So infinity is infinity is infinity. So the past infinity and the future infinity are one infinity. So we can look in this way and recognize we don't know how long we've been revolving from infinity to infinity to infinity, but we could wake up now and acknowledge that we're here for a purpose. And we could just keep going round and round and round and round and round, and we could be in denial about it. We could use all kinds of mental gymnastics to defend that position of relativism and nothing really matters. And it's all one infinity, so who cares? But actually, you could tell the truth, which is that you care. It matters to you. So I'm encouraging you to be bold and be truthful and be yourself and fulfill your purpose, because it's a good purpose. Whatever fears or judgments you might have, I'm certain of it. So know that that is true and be willing to take a stand and affirm the goodness of your purpose. And don't judge negatively your purpose, because we can also do that. We can say, oh, it's a stupid purpose. It's not important enough. It'd only be an important purpose if it was something else, but this purpose isn't good enough. Who cares about this purpose? It's selfish, or it's self-centered, or trivial, or whatever it is, but that's all also wrong thinking, because the truth is that it matters to you. So just be willing to affirm the goodness of it, whatever it is. Okay, so hopefully you have some sense of clarity on that. And now I'd like to invite you to dedicate your practice today to this purpose. So as I've pointed out recently, all of our experiences, we could see in a certain way that all of our experiences is energy. So regardless of the way in which we think about the experience, whether we call it a relationship experience or a financial experience or a health experience or whatever else we might call it, actually it's energy. So whatever your intention is, this practice, which is looking and exploring and learning and discovering about energy, has everything to do with it. So just, if nothing else, just silently to yourself, just say, I choose to dedicate this practice to my healing intention, to my good intention. And know that that's powerful. Just that much is powerful, because our intention and our attention are what give shape to and direct the energy, which is our experience. Okay, so now let's find a space on the floor, and if it's comfortable for you, then I'll invite you to lie prone, which is to say face down. And if it's not comfortable for you, then choose another. Well, if it's not comfortable for you, you find out how uncomfortable it is, because there's always you have to figure out. Sometimes it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but you can deal with it. Sometimes it's too uncomfortable and you can't deal with it. So you have to be honest about that. If it's too much and you just don't know how to do that in a good way at all, or even approach a good way, then don't do it. And in that case, just find another posture that it does work for you and just breathe with awareness through the nose. And there will be something else today that probably that will work for you. So, but for those who are able to lie prone, then we will explore some of the same movements that we did yesterday. Most of you were here yesterday. For the one who was not here yesterday, then I'll have to describe all of it to you. So, so we're lying face down, and now you've got your nose, presumably, and so if your face is just straight down, then your nose maybe seems like it's in the way. So you want to find a way that can be comfortable for you. For most of us, it's probably going to involve lifting the head up a little bit, so you've got a little bit more space between the floor and the nose. So if you have something between your forehead and the floor, that will probably help. So you just get some space between your nose and the floor. So you could use a folded blanket or a folded towel, or you could grate, or if you're just visualizing, then you can do that. But for the sake of completeness, I'll just say, and for those who will watch it on YouTube, it will probably be helpful. You could use your hand or your forearm as well. So you could bring the arm up between your head and the floor, so that your hand and arm are resting on the floor and your forehead is resting on the arm or the hand. Or you could do both hands or both forearms, whatever works for you. Okay, so find a way that you can be here and really let go as much as possible. And this will get clearer as we do the movement. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just slowly lift and lower the head. So you're going to just make a small movement. And at first, it's helpful if you can just imagine it before you do it. And then when you have some confidence that you can do it, or that you might be able to do it, then begin to slowly lift and lower the head. Just start by just half an inch. Don't do any more than that to begin with. And then as you grow confident, if you wish, you could slightly increase that, although it's probably not necessary. And as you're doing it, be aware of the whole self in this movement. So when the instruction is given, as I've given it, that you're going to lift and lower the head, the attention probably goes to the head. And if your attention goes to the head, then you're probably going to forget about the rest of yourself to some degree, and then your habits are going to take over. And if your habits aren't so great, which they're probably not, then, or at least they could be improved, then you're not getting the full benefit. So be aware of the whole self, especially be aware of the whole spine in this movement. And please be aware of your breathing, so that you can breathe through the nose in a calm, smooth, relaxed manner. So if you can't breathe through the nose in a calm, smooth, relaxed manner, it's a good indication that you're trying too hard. So do less, so that you can breathe through the nose in a calm, smooth way. Now, be, again, as I say, aware of the whole spine. And if possible, be aware of the somatic center. So somewhere around what would be called the dantian, the lower abdomen. And just be aware of, can the movement originate from this area? Rather than just the head, can the whole self be involved? And can you notice that it originates from this lower abdomen? So that's a lot to be aware of. Now, as you lower, this is of the two stages of the movement, the lifting and the lowering. The lowering is even more important. It's the pandiculation phase. So be particularly slow as you lower, and lower all the way down until you come to a complete rest. So there's this sensory motor amnesia that's hidden in the places where we don't move, where we stop short, or where we tense up or fall into unconsciousness. So particularly at the end of the movement, as you come to complete rest, really be conscious of continuing to release so that you can lower a little bit more. You're not pushing down, but you're releasing and lowering down even more. Remember that you can rest anytime, and that if you can't do this in a good way, don't do it. Well, if you don't know how to do it in a good way, see if you can find out how to do it in a good way. And if you can't do it, if you can't find out how to do it in a good way, then don't do it. At least not presently. Someday. But if you can't do it today in a good way, don't hurt yourself. So now we'll also explore turning the head to the side and then lifting and lowering the head. So you might need to make an adjustment with how you've got your hand or arm or whatever positioned, or if you've got something under the head, you might want to, maybe you need to change the height of it. I don't know, but I'm just suggesting that maybe you'll need to make an adjustment, maybe not, but do find a way to be in this position with the head turned. You can choose either side. It doesn't matter because we're going to do both. If you can't decide, I'll just tell you turn to the left. But if you've already turned to the right, be happy to turn to the right. That's fine. And so you're going to start with your head turned in to one side or the other. And then you're going to, same thing, you're going to lift and lower the head with the head turned, continuing to be turned to the side throughout. So just a small movement, just a half inch, or for those who don't know, inches, centimeter or two. 3 at the most. So be aware of the whole self involved in this movement, and particularly the spine. Remember that the head is connected to the spine all the way down to the tailbone, and the tailbone is obviously part of the pelvis, and the pelvis is connected to the leg. So as you're lifting the head, be aware of how you feel that all the way down the spine and into the legs. And you want to be, if not already sensitive enough, you want to become sensitive enough that you can start to notice how that feels, because as the head turns, the whole spine is involved in this turn. At least hopefully it is, otherwise you're going to hurt yourself. So the whole spine, you could imagine that each of the vertebrae is slightly turning, so it's twisting all the way down to the pelvis, but then the pelvis is obviously somewhat stabilized because it's resting on the floor. And then because it's this turning, twisting action is happening, you're going to feel a difference between the right and left legs. So you'll actually feel that something wants to happen as you lift the head. With the head turned, you'll feel perhaps in the opposite leg. So if you've got your head turned to the left, you'll feel it perhaps in your right leg. You'll feel something in the left leg too, but it will be a different thing that you feel in the two legs. So remember, you can rest anytime that you need, and please do breathe through the nose calmly, smoothly. And if you can't breathe through the nose in a good way, then do less, because it's important that you're able to breathe in a good way. It's your monitor system. So it helps, it's your guidance system. It helps you to know when you're doing it in a good way or not. So when you're ready, you can rest for a moment and then turn the head back to center slowly and come to rest. And I'm suggesting that because when we turn to the side, sometimes we stiffen up. So we want to slowly come to center and relax. And then when you're ready, turn to the other side and repeat the same thing on the other side. So we're going to be lifting and lowering just a little bit, sensitive to the sensations and the movement through the whole body, being aware that we want to move ideally with originating in the lower abdomen, breathing through the nose. And maybe you can even start to feel like a wave. So if we start to tune into the energy sensation or the energy component, then you can start to feel that maybe there's a wave of energy, subtle, but this wave, and you can feel the wave through the body, up and down the spine as you lift and lower. And remember, really come all the way to rest completely, an even deeper level of rest each time. So don't be in a hurry, because if you're in a hurry, you'll miss a lot of what's available. So it's very, very important that you want to really come all the way down and see how much more can you let go of when you come to rest. So when you are satisfied with that, you can come back to center slowly, and then we will come onto all fours slowly. So don't fling yourself into it. Consider how you're going to do it before you do it, and then do it in a good way so that it's pleasurable. So think about how, if you observe animals, non-human animals, often, well, I don't know about all animals, but many animals, you'll see that we would call it stretching, but actually they're doing pandiculations. Like a chicken will we call it stretching, but they'll push one leg behind them and they'll do a thing with so whole body's involved in it. And they're doing a pandiculation. So it naturally feels good. You see a cat, we call it a stretch, but they're actually doing a pandiculation. And so when you're moving, you can give yourself that. You could actually be giving yourself that all the time, but at least as we're transitioning from one thing to the next here, find a way to do it in a way that's pleasurable. Breathing through the nose. So we're on hands and knees. And let's start by turning to look to the side. So let's start by looking to the right and then come to center, and then look to the left and come to center. So when you're in center, you want to be looking forward with the whole spine participating in that. So you're not just tilting the head, but the whole spine is bowing. The chest comes slightly forward, and that's your neutral center position. And then you're going to look to the right, come to center, and you're going to look to the left and come to center. And do this a few more times, and each time you do it, slow down, breathe through the nose, and be aware of the whole experience. See if you can really start to feel the whole thing, and see if you can even start to sense the movement initiating from the lower abdomen or from the somatic center, or even you could say from the pelvis, somewhere in that general area. So I don't want you to get too serious about it and think that there's just one right answer, but just start to be sensitive and playful and experiment. What can you discover? So as you're turning to the side, notice how the whole body is involved in that. So you can feel that. See if you can notice the shifting sensations in the hands and the knees as you turn to the side, and then come to center. Do that a few times, and then when you kind of have a sense of that, then see, can you also be aware of how that whole, the sensation, the energy can be felt all the way up the arms and leg into the shoulder joint and the hip joint, so that you can feel how actually when you're turning, the shoulder and arm have to also move. So the relationship of the arm to the torso changes. The relationship of the thigh to the pelvis changes as you're turning side to side. So recently I've been talking about these inguinal creases. It's called the Kwa in Qigong. And so you're maybe have some awareness of that. And you notice as you turn to look to the side, how is the inguinal crease on the right side and the left side, how are those changing? Now it's somewhat subtle, so don't be too concerned if it's not obvious to you right away, but just be playful with it. And then notice in a similar way, there's a similar kind of relationship between in the shoulder joint as there is in the leg, in the hip joint. That is, the shoulder joint kind of forms a kind of kwa, similar to that with the inguinal crease. Not exactly the same, but somewhat similar. So you can feel how they're opening and closing as you turn side to side. And as if that's not enough, you can be aware of the spine and how the spine is curving like a C when you turn to the side. So that when you turn to the right side, your right hip actually comes closer to your right armpit, and your right armpit comes closer to your right hip. And so there's a C curve in your spine. And similarly, there's a mirror of that when you turn to the left. Now notice that when your hips, your right hip and your left hip have a connection. That is, when the right hip moves up toward the right shoulder or the right armpit, the left hip is moving away from the left armpit. So in other words, as you turn to the right side or your right waist shortens and your left waist lengthens. And when you turn to the left, your left waist shortens and your right waist lengthens. Of course, the ribs are connected to the spine, so the ribs are also moving. So there's a lot to be aware of, and you're breathing through the nose, hopefully. Remember that you can rest anytime you desire or need, and that's important. So you please do that whenever you need to. Okay, so yesterday I did a funny thing, and it might have been somewhat confusing to those who were here, so I want to clear it up. Even after you could tell I had some doubts about some of the instruction I was giving, and then I checked it, and I still gave the wrong instruction. So I gave an instruction for crawling, which is a valid form of crawling, but it's just not a common human way of crawling. It would be, some animals surely do that because different animals have different gait patterns. So the instruction that I gave was what you would call, I guess, a unilateral gait pattern, where the right leg and the right arm move together, sort of, or in sequence, followed by the left. So it's a side to side kind of thing. But humans actually move in a cross lateral pattern, typically. So it's an interesting experiment to move using different gait patterns. I've done some of that a long time ago, which was very interesting. And so maybe we'll explore that at another time. But for our purposes today, and more broadly, I'm interested in us moving in human patterns. So let's revisit crawling. Okay, so we're on all fours, hands and knees, and let's start, just do a few rocking forward and backward, just to familiarize yourself with that. So just rocking forward and backward just a little bit in a way that's comfortable for you on hands and knees. You're going to make sure that when you're coming forward just a little bit, that you're aware of how the spine has to move to accommodate that. So your spine has to, you're wanting to look forward, your relationship of everything is shifting forward. So your spine has to bow a little bit so that you can continue to look forward. So your chest will come a little bit forward. If you take this to an extreme, which is doable for the human body, you can even come all the way forward so that you're in like what would be called an upward facing dog posture from yoga, so that your thighs would actually come all the way down, or at least some of the thigh would be touching, and your chest would be very far forward, your shoulders back. But most of you're probably not going to go to that extreme, but that kind of gives you a sense of how far you can go. And then and obviously that shows you, as the further forward you come, the more the spine has to bow, the more the chest has to come forward, because your center of gravity is changing. So you need, or rather, the center of gravity is not changing so much as you're changing, and you want to keep your center of gravity in a good way. So then you can come back, and you can come back as far as is comfortable, all the way to child's pose, if that's comfortable for you. But those are kind of the extreme ranges of this motion, and you might just stay somewhere right in the middle. You don't have to do a big movement, but just to kind of give you the ends of the range, that's kind of where you would end up if you took it to the extremes. Okay, so now we're on hands and knees. So this is a crawling position. We're looking forward, and you'll maybe recall that some of the qualities or properties of a soma, as defined by Thomas Hanna, is that soma exists in time and space. So it's four-dimensional. So the first three dimensions mean we've got verticality. We sit up, we stand up, or here we're on all fours. There's kind of verticality. We have a face, which means that there's a forward. So we face where we want to go. And then we have right and left. Okay, so these are our first three dimensions, and we can move volitionally through these three dimensions. Well, at least if we remember how to do so. So here we're remembering how to move in a good way in all three dimensions, and we're starting, or not starting, but we're moving presently from this crawling position. So we want to be able to move forward. We're facing forward. we see something, we want to move forward. We want to be able to do it in a good way. So we want to explore this contralateral crawling pattern. So you can take your right hand and lift it up and then put it down, and do that a few times. And when you put it down, really put all the weight back into that hand. Not all of the weight of the whole body, but all of the weight that would be distributed evenly into that hand. So you'll notice that as you take the hand up, the weight has to be redistributed into the 3 points of contact. And then as you put the hand back down, you want to redistribute the weight back into that so that it's evenly distributed between the 4 points. So now you next are going to, when you next lift the hand, now then bring it forward a little bit, not a lot, just a few inches maybe, and place it down. And then lift it up and bring it back so it's even with the left hand and put it down. And then bring it up and forward and down and up and back and down. And do that a few times. And then when you're ready and you'd like to progress, you can bring it forward again, put the hand down, and then you're going to lean into that hand a little bit, and you're going to lift up the left knee. So your right hand is a little bit forward, and you're going to lift the left knee. And then you're going to put the left knee back down. So you're going to do that a few times, lifting the left knee and then lowering back down. So each time you do it, just like you did with the hand, you want to feel how when you lift the knee, you have to redistribute the weight into the 3 points that are still in contact. As you lower it back down, redistribute the weight so it's evenly distributed between the 4 points. And then when you're ready to progress, next time you lift the knee, swing it slowly, or slowly bring it forward a little bit, whatever's comfortable for you, whatever feels like a natural amount to bring it forward, and then lower it and bring the weight evenly distributed on the 4 points again. And if you like, you can reverse that. So you could lift and bring it back and lower, and then lift and bring it forward and lower. So do that a few times. And remember, you can rest anytime. And please breathe through the nose. Relax the face. So now, when you're ready, you can reverse that whole thing and bring lift the left knee, bring it back to the starting position, and then lift the right hand and bring it back to the starting position. So you're now in the original starting position, hands and knees, like tabletop position. And then we'll do it on the other side. So you're going to lift and lower the left hand. Same thing as we did before. So when you lift it, you want to be aware of the redistribution of the weight to the 3 points. They're still in contact. And then when you lower it, redistribute the weight evenly to the 4 points. And notice how you do it. And notice is there anywhere that you're feeling that kind of energetic stagnation? Is there anywhere that's getting pinched or where you're not allowing for a good flow? And just ease up, lighten up, let the energy flow so that you're not making it harder for yourself. Then when you're ready, you can lift and bring the hand forward a little bit, place it down. And you can do that a few times. So it seems, remedial, but we don't know how to do it in a good way. So we have to learn how to do it in a good way. Because if we can't crawl, maybe we have no business walking. We have no business walking, we're going to have a hard time functioning very well. So we probably want to be able to get ourselves to a point where we can walk. So let's first master crawling. Okay, so now when you're ready, you bring that left hand forward, place it down, and then you can lift and lower the right knee. And see, with all of this, can you let the lower abdomen really be the origin of the movement, and don't overly tense the abdomen. Don't unnecessarily tense the abdomen. You want to let the energy be able to have a good home there. So you want to make space for it. So we're lifting and lowering the right knee, and each time doing it in a good way so that you can really feel how the energy is redistributed each time, so that you can feel a flow of energy. When you really start to when you start to really feel it, you'll notice it feels good. It's not just some thing that you're doing that mechanically, but it's a blissful experience. Think about why on earth would the baby want to crawl if it was painful, if it was just a mechanical, lifeless thing? Nothing would be motivating the baby to crawl. The baby's motivated to crawl because there's pleasure. So we want to remember that there is pleasure. There is pleasure in the aliveness and in the movement. So you're reawakening your ability to sense and experience and open to that pleasure. And then you can progress to lifting and bringing the right knee forward and placing it down, and then lifting and bringing it back, and then lifting and bringing it forward, lifting and bringing it back. So then, if you have the room to do it, if you have the room to do it, then you could even crawl a bit. You could try going forward a few crawls and then backward a few crawls. If you don't have the room for it, then obviously don't do it. And there's a comment saying, I'm having a job redistributing weight evenly in remaining 3 limbs. Yes. I'm not surprised. I mean, that's definitely a big part of what we have to relearn. So this is, so we're not, we're at an hour almost now, so we're not going to progress to standing today. But standing, you think, oh, well, we only have 2 points then, so maybe that's easier. But actually getting, it's very challenging to learn how to distribute the weight on the feet if we haven't first learned to do it well on hands and knees. So learning to do it on hands and knees is going to be very, very helpful for learning to do it standing. When you can do it on hands and knees, then you can progress to standing. And when you can distribute the weight on the feet in standing, then everything's going to be good. You'll feel so much better. You won't fatigue as easily. You'll feel more centered. You'll have more power, more endurance. So that's something to look forward to. And during the Q&A, we can talk about it a little bit and see if there's anything that can help with that. But I think you're in the right place. If you're having some challenges with it, that's part of the part of what we're learning here. So, all right. So now let's conclude our guided practice by finding a posture that you can inhabit with confidence for, let's say, 5 minutes. So that could be sitting, it could be lying down, whatever is going to work for you. So find whatever that is. Obviously, if you're lying down, that increases the likelihood that you'll fall asleep. And it carries with it its own set of challenges. So if you don't have to lie down, then consider a different posture, but lying down is perfectly acceptable if that's what's best for you. So take a moment and bring your attention to your breathing. So hopefully you can breathe through the nose. And let the breath be smooth, slow, relaxed. So nothing forced about it, nothing restrained about it. Don't try to slow it down, because if you try to slow it down, it will just add strain, but you can relax and allow it to naturally slow down. And allow for the breath to descend into the lower abdomen. So obviously, probably the air itself is not moving there, but your intention is directing the breath in a broader sense into the lower abdomen. So you can sense that with each inhalation, the lower abdomen is gently expanded. With each exhalation, the lower abdomen relaxes more deeply. And take a moment to recall your intention and consciously affirm the goodness of your intention. Sometimes we have doubts or objections to our own positive intentions. And those can interfere with the realization of our intention. So we want to affirm that our intention is good. And whatever, if there's any objection or obstacle or any interference that arises, whether it's a negative thought or belief or some kind of doubt or fear or concern, just continue to breathe. So don't go to war with any of those things. Don't let them become a problem for you. Instead, just breathe and see that you can begin to feel that there's the same kind of wave-like motion or sensation that I was pointing to earlier, that you could feel in the spine or in the body. See that you can start to notice that with the breath, that like a pulsation. So that and particularly in the lower abdomen, and that as you inhale, you can feel this gentle expansion, pulsation. And as you exhale, you're not forcing anything, you're not squeezing anything. There's just a gentle relaxation, and you can feel like a very nourishing feeling. And this simple practice of breath awareness in this way, in and of itself, is very healing. So this is a good thing that you can do anytime that you need it. So anytime throughout the day, if you find that you're uh, worried or anxious or irritated or reactive, fearful, then this is a very good practice. Very simple, but just to breathe through the nose, let the breath descend to the lower abdomen with your intention, and just allow for this smooth, gentle, slow pulsation. So just allow for nature in this moment to nourish you and to support the fulfillment of your intention. And just trust that that is so. You don't have to know all of the details, the same as you don't have to know how the food you eat is transformed into your flesh. Still happens as long as you allow it. And we know that just as digestion is interfered with if you're indulging anger or fear, in the same way, our positive healing intention naturally is made manifest as long as we just simply allow it, and we just want to get out of our own way. So here we're just allowing nature to fulfill this positive intention just by keeping our attention with the breath in this way. Okay, so for those who are here live, we can stay on for the Q&A, and otherwise, this is the conclusion of the guided practice. And of course, anybody who has the luxury of doing so and wishes to, please, there's no rush in anything, but I am going to end the recording. So there we go.